So we previously reported that about 2,900 people at the DOJ have kind of suddenly quit. And with that, they've lost a lot of technical expertise. We're seeing that with the fact that the Trump regime's utter incompetence with respect to the Epstein files, but also with respect to other cases as well, other high profile cases that deserve, though, the right amount of attention. Take a listen to this. This is from the Department of Justice's emergency motion in a case. I'm going to tell you what case it is in just a moment, but let me just read to you what the DOJ says. Because of significant operational constraints caused by the imminent Christmas and New Year's holidays, i.e., lack of sufficient technically qualified government personnel in the Washington, D.C. area for the remainder of this week and next, which make the current compliance deadline fall a mere one business day after the court's revised clarifying order, the government anticipates that it will not be able to review all electronic storage devices containing classified information, delete that information, and return those devices to, I'm going to give away what case it is right now, Richmond's counsel by December 29th, 2025. Now, as a former practicing lawyer who went up against the DOJ on many occasions, I would never expect ever for the DOJ to put in a declaration saying that it has a lack of sufficient technically qualified personnel in Washington, D.C. I can't stress enough how embarrassing that is for the DOJ, and the judges know it. So what case was that in? Richmond. Which case is Richmond? James Comey's lawyer and friend, Daniel Richmond. Remember during the Comey grand jury, the only witness to testify was an FBI agent who testified to tainted information, attorney-client communications. Well, those were the attorney-client communications between one, James Comey, and two, his lawyer and friend, Daniel Richmond, that the government should never have had. So if the Comey case was not dismissed because of the fact that Lindsay Halligan was disqualified for being an unlawful United States attorney who was never appointed and can never hold that position, there was a myriad of other grounds that likely would have got dismissed for. One would have been the only witness who testified was an FBI agent testifying to attorney-client privilege communications between Richmond and Comey. So after the Comey case gets dismissed, Richmond files a lawsuit in Washington, D.C. federal court against the government for an unlawful search and seizure, taking his records without a proper warrant and utilizing said records in the Comey grand jury. A federal judge rules. Indeed, the DOJ stole these attorney-client communications. It was an unlawful search and seizure. So the DOJ was ordered to do two things. One, turn over a copy of these records to the Eastern District of Virginia, where they will kind of keep it almost in like abeyance or an escrow. And two, you DOJ, you delete them. You can't have access to this. Delete them, destroy them, and return them to Richmond. Should it be a difficult task, right? Where are the files located? Probably on OneDrive, right? Hit delete, make a copy, and then turn them over. How difficult of a freaking task could that be? I mean, I've been in 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I'll go out on a limb here and say because of the lack of technical expertise in Washington, D.C., maybe it will take a day for the geniuses over at the DOJ and Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche and Halligan to figure this out. This order to turn it over by December 29th was made on December 12th. Okay. And the DOJ is now begging in an emergency motion. We don't have the expertise. Well, who's writing that motion? You probably wonder. You're probably saying, Ben, no. Was it Lindsay Halligan? Is Halligan the one writing this motion? Yes, it's her and Todd Blanche. And you may be saying, well, Ben, isn't she disqualified? And I would say yes. So how is she doing this? Who the hell knows? This is an incompetent, unlawful regime. Look, Lindsay Halligan is a signatory to this thing in this ridiculous request. And so is Todd Blanche. So as they're all covering up the Epstein files, they apparently didn't have the technical expertise either to call the Southern District of New York to realize there was 1.2 million records that were missing. MeidasTouch had to do an expose and point that out. They are saying they don't even have the technical expertise to hit freaking delete and turn over the records back to Richmond. Wow. I want to bring in Harry Litman from the Talking Feds YouTube channel and the Talking Feds podcast. Harry, you led a prosecutorial office. You were a United States attorney in Pennsylvania. You worked at Maine Justice in a major leadership position. When you see a motion like this, you're probably thinking to yourself, we've seen motions like this from disorganized firms of bad lawyers who we went against, but the DOJ would never do a letter like this. Well, guess what, Harry? Trump has made the DOJ into those incompetent law firms that used to represent Donald Trump.
Where do you even start? So yes, it's the biggest, most resourced law firm in the world. And with all kinds of departments and divisions to do exactly this sort of thing with expertise. That's first. Second, as you say, there was a subpoena to Richmond. We're talking way back when he handed it over. Almost certainly, it's been, kept, and they're certainly not trying to say, oh, we disseminated it so much. Almost certainly it was in one spot. Third, as you say, they have been using it for purposes that extend beyond the justification for the search, and also that trench on very likely attorney-client information, and that's already a pre-existing bureaucratic screw-up, because what do you need to do there rather than showing it to the FBI agent who then goes to the grand jury? You need a special tape team, and that means you gather all the materials, and anything in this little discrete box is seen only by people who review and analyze for attorney-client privilege or whatever, and only then pass it on to the main people. And then fourth, I have not been in the catacombs where and that's wrong. I've been there. I've been scared to operate, but where the equipment and the temperature and everything is extremely, complex, complicated, state of the art. But as far as I can tell, you got it. Delete.
By the way, the audience wants to hear your beautiful baritone, so make sure you grab your mic and put it closer to you right now if you can.
Oh, that is right. You want me to start again?
No, Harry. I was trying to do it smooth and seamless there.
So the notion that it's difficult, and they've had this for all this time. They already should have done the investigation for the attorney-client privilege stuff. This is not so different, by the way. You absolutely aptly raise what's happening in Epstein, because they've had the docs forever. You got to do a forensic examination. Oots. But then, it is your analogy to a sort of threadbare law firm is really well taken. The problem is that Donald Trump has made these holidays. Excuse me. For one, this could have been anticipated, but for two, there is such a thing. In fact, it's required by law that DOJ people work on holidays, and maybe they get time and a half, God forbid. But it is such a, dog ate it kind of piss poor excuse for something they just had to know about for so long and is so easy to do. Now you wonder, of course, you're watching, to go back to Epstein for a second, their delays be coincident with a lot of rascal moves where it seems like anything that could be problematic for Trump just doesn't come up. This is Daniel Richman and Jack Smith and Jim Comey. And is there some kind of way in which they're preserving, especially vis-a-vis Comey, because this is at the core of their charge, some way that they're saying we just can't get to it in time, but there's something more underhanded going on? I don't know. But that the bottom line of this is just not that complicated to take a discrete set of records, deliver it in response to a subpoena, and delete those records. It's just, and they're not saying, oh, we can do all that, but we have to arrange to give it to Professor Richmond. That could take a little while, or send over. I mean, the deletion, which is their main job, apparently is just too daunting to do in 17 days. It's an embarrassment for sure, as you started with the DOJ, except they really do seem to be beyond embarrassment.
Right. And I guess the question is this because they've fired or pushed out 2,900 plus staff and personnel? And guess what? When you get rid of the IT department, when you think, why do I need FBI forensic departments? And why do I need the data analytics? What do they really do? They do things. They do things. Okay. They're actually very important, to this. But I wonder this, Harry, and I'll throw this to you. Mm-hmm. If I'm a criminal defense lawyer, I'm thinking to myself that what a time to be a criminal defense lawyer, because usually you're getting outpapered, outmaneuvered by the limitless resources of the USA. And if this is what they're doing in the most high profile cases, Epstein, Richmond. Now, if I'm representing criminal defendant X, Y, and Z, less high profile, may have some local attention, I'm thinking to myself, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to paper the SHI, out of this DOJ, because I don't respect him. Like thinking about the Anthony Joshua, Logan, Jake Paul fight, and respecting a good fighter versus a non-good fighter. And Anthony Joshua seeing someone in Jake Paul as a bad fighter, not really someone who deserves to be in the ring. But two big boxers aren't often going to come out and start throwing, you're going to respect them a little bit. So the fact that that your adversary can do upon you what you do upon them is sometimes a mutual deterrent amongst top lawyers to go, okay, we can make our lives very difficult, or we could streamline it. And it's why actually when I would have cases against the top lawyers who are capable of doing all the tricks, we'd actually have a much more streamlined litigation that benefited everybody's clients versus when I would litigate against someone who was trying to prove something and who was so it would always be a pain in the neck, to do that. But now if you're a criminal defense lawyer, I think you're looking at your adversary a bit differently in terms of the tactics and strategy that you're using. And you're going, I've got a really weak and vulnerable party. Maybe I'll declare ready and just go to trial in 30 days, knowing that they're not even going to be ready with their discovery. And then they're going to have to dismiss it because there's nobody there who even gets the document. It's affecting so many things that aren't being reported, Harry. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah. And if I can extend the metaphor a bit of the Jake Paul situation, it's always been when you're the other guy in the ring and the sort of bad guy, if you want to analogize it to wrestling or something, that the referee is at a minimum more respectful of your opponent. In other words, the judge, you start as a defense attorney, and you felt this going a little bit uphill because credibility rests so strongly with the DOJ based on years, generations of truth-telling and probity. And in so many courts, including in some of these, it is just out the window. That's point number one. And then point number two, I want to add, you showed it in passing, but here we have this bizarre and hazardous situation, hazardous for anyone who lives in Virginia, hazardous for the Department of Justice, that they continue to stamp their complaints with Lindsay Halligan, United States Attorney. And the law, it's true, there have been cases in which the court said, we won't dismiss an indictment because she wasn't the only one on. But we're talking about a non-entity, a pretend prosecutor, at least the same set of circumstances as somebody who's recused. I've been in this position as a U.S. attorney, and it's not enough that you don't sign it and your name doesn't appear. You're the boss of that office. And if you're involved in the case, that's absolutely going to, have an impact. And if you shouldn't be acting in that way, the whole thing is, in fact, precarious. So we're going to see that they are assuming very cavalierly that just if they stick other people, and here, as you noted, Todd Blanche doing a little procedural, motion, it shows how important the case is, even though they can't get it together to comply with the court in 17 days. But there's going to be courts are going to say, you were involved here. Look, here's your name right here. I don't care if there are others there. This indictment is going to be dismissed, maybe without prejudice, but dismissed. So they're doing a really weird schizophrenic kind of action with Halligan at the same time as they're trying to get her confirmed by the orthodox process, which would in fact clear up all the problems. On the other hand, good luck with that, starting with blue slips. No way she gets there. They are also being brazen, offending judges in the Eastern District and really thumbing their nose at the ruling by Judge Curry by continuing to say Lindsay Halligan's the U.S. attorney on the tissue thin pretext that, well, you didn't say at the bottom of your order she must be removed from the office. You just said she has no business being there. She's not a real U.S. attorney. Actions she does are a legal nullity. So there, the combination of bad or nasty politics and, as you say, bad law with fewer resources and people who don't want to do it is really, every time DOJ, it feels like, comes into court, their reputation is getting lower and lower. And that's affecting things in cases across the board.
Everybody, make sure you hit subscribe to Harry Litman's YouTube channel. It's called Talking Feds. Subscribe right now and subscribe to his podcast and his Substack. Thanks, Harry.
Thanks, Ben.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.